I know we're starting at 11:30. We've got a few more people joining, so we're just going to give it a minute or two just to let the next few people join. And then running order of today, so everyone knows, is we'll do a presentation at the start just to show everyone the partnership between Capture and Pliant, and then we'll go into a live demo of the software. Cool. Cool. There you go. Can you see that okay, Muks?
Good, thanks, Jonny. Very clear.
Cool. Fine. There you go. That's better. Cool. Perfect. Right. It's 11:32. So we're going to start the webinar today. Hopefully everyone can see my screen and hear me okay. What this webinar is brought to you today is to run through basically the partnership between Capture Expense and Pliant. So before we get into the rest of the slides, what I want to do is introduce myself. I'm Jonny Dowell. I'm a strategic account executive here at Capture Expense, and I've brought along with me Muks, and I'll let Muks introduce himself.
Hey everyone, I'm head of sales for Pliant for UK and Ireland. We are a corporate credit card provider, and very, very delighted to be partnering with Capture Expense. So yeah, we think we have a really cool and innovative market leading solution combined we're offering, and we're really excited to show you how that looks today.
Cool. Perfect. So before I let Muks take over and present his slides, I just want to set the scene of why we have partnered with Pliant. So in terms of where Capture Expense positions themselves in the market is around expense management and expense management software. So we do everything from making sure companies and businesses stay compliant, all the way from reimbursements, just traditional credit card banks, all the way through to connecting to your accounting ERP system or into payroll, for example. Where we strategically partnered with Pliant was because there was definitely not a gap in the market, but there's definitely a market that we saw that we didn't fit in terms of offering our own credit card solution. So the reason we reached out, I know several months ago now, to Pliant was to see if there was a way that we could join up together and become a strategic offering to both our customers, their customers, and then completely new businesses as well. And what it's allowed us to do is it's allowed us at Capture Expense to focus solely on our EMS solution, so our product, and stay experts within that market field. And what it allows us to do, to offer our businesses, our customers, and reach out to other businesses is a credit card solution. And that's where Pliant comes into play, and they become experts in their field within offering credit facilitation and offering credit cards and policies and compliance that way, and spend control as a whole. So cool. Muks, I'll let you take over. I'll flip over to the next slide. Just let me know when you need me to change.
Perfect. Thanks, Jonny. Many of you will be familiar with Capture Expense already, but Pliant might be a new name. So I thought a good foundation could be to provide a little bit of background around who we are and some of our credentials. So we were founded in 2020 in Berlin, which is where our headquarters are to this day. But we have a big presence in the UK and Ireland now, with our UK head office in London. We've raised more than 100 million in equity financing. And, you can see some of the investors there, like PayPal, Motive, Commerzbank. Commerzbank as well, one of the largest banks in Germany. We also have a partnership similar to what we're doing with Capture. This is a very tried and tested path of partnership approach. Now delighted to be able to bring it to the UK market, starting with Capture. One very interesting thing about us is, how international we are. So for any companies that are operating multinationally, this is, a real big advantage. We operate in 30 different countries and can issue cards and credit lines in 12 different currencies. We're more than 200 employees now, and as you can imagine, having partnerships with banks like Commerzbank and BBVA and others, having the highest security standards is just something that is mandatory. So you can always expect that with us. And below you can see some of the partners that we have already, and yeah, great to now be able to add capture expense to that list as well. Next slide, please. So we're going to go deeper into some of the actual products and the features, but just at a high level here, one of the main kind of differentiators in terms of the market is there are companies out there that offer expense and cards. So that's just, to full transparency. So what we differentiate is offering credit cards. Now, credit cards are really important for a few different reasons. One being acceptance. Not every merchant likes a prepaid card, and also from a perspective of working capital. If you have a pre-fund solution, it means you have to typically have idle funds sitting in your account, which is not always the best use of cash. So from an acceptance and working capital perspective and operational fluidity perspective, credit card is usually the best option for most businesses. There's a lot of flexibility around the card management. So, I'm sure a lot of you will have had experience either in this company, current company or past companies working with house banks, and some of the friction and challenges that can come with in terms of, wanting to issue new cards or manage cards or block cards or, see why transactions are declined. We allow you effectively to become your own bank, and we'll show you what that looks like. In terms of the best-in-class applications connected in real time, this is the real beauty. So when we work with Capture, it's so important that the transaction data feeds through to Capture in real time. When anyone who has worked in finance or deals with receipt management knows it can be a real pain capturing receipts, and by having that notification going through to the employee to their capture expense mobile app in real time, reminding them to upload their receipt, is the difference between that receipt being uploaded and potentially being lost. And there's a lot of different kind of automation and workflow and AI that you have from Capture, and so those two things combined is a very powerful solution, we believe, in the market. Next slide, please. Next one again, please.
This is basically around our goal to you and what we're going to show you today. So as Muks has said, you're going to see the full demo and what Pliant can do from their side in terms of the credit cards, how you can distribute and do your spend management control. But what we'll show you from the capture expense point of view is both the user perspective of how they can reconcile receipts real time, as Muks has said, and then also from a finance side, how you can report on all the credit card data coming in, and then also run reports using our AI tools, making life a lot more easier for both finance teams, but then also credit card holders. Cool. So shall we get into the demo now, Muks?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm going to just share my screen. Just give me 1 second. I don't know if there's some way for people, or maybe Jonny, you can tell me if it's easily visible. If you can see that, okay?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Okay, perfect. So this is what we're looking at right now is the central dashboard of the Pliant environment. So there's a few key things that I want to show you today and around how things can be managed in terms of some of the features that Pliant offer. The first thing is that we do provide credit, as we talked about. Now, with credit, there's different ways to do this. So it could be on weekly credit lines, bi-weekly credit lines, could be monthly credit lines. For any companies who are operating across internationally, or paying suppliers in different currencies, we can also set up currencies in multiple credit lines. So you could have a USD credit line next to a GBP credit line, next to a Euro credit line. So there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to that. And that's important because if you are trying to reduce your FX exposure, then that's a very good way to be able to do that. Now, The process to invite a new member to the platform is really straightforward. We just require a few bits of basic information. And when we invite that member, we allocate the team, which is the cost center. And the other thing between Pliant and Capture is that all of this information is mapped and seamlessly syncs across. We then have different roles, and depending on the roles, they will be allowed to do different things within the platform. So, for example, you can have a complete hierarchical structure which says, okay, for example, some admins who would then have access to all of the database of all of the cards and all of the transactions can issue cards up to X amount, whereas maybe some others cannot. And then card holders can see their own cards. Accountants can be invited, and they can do, some tasks related to pre-accounting information, and auditors can have read-only view access as well. So it's very customizable in terms of who can have access and who can do what, and you can self-service this entirely through the platform. Okay, so let's jump to the actual card issuance flow. So when you're issuing a card, you can do this in a few different ways. The first is a virtual card. The other is a single-use virtual card or a physical card. There's no limitation on the number of cards that you can virtual cards that you can issue. And so how a lot of companies are looking to manage spend and improve spend tracking is by doing things like having a dedicated card per supplier, which makes it easier for them to then pull reports and do spending analysis, and also to make sure that cards are then not used for unintended purposes. And I'm going to show you some of the controls that are available to ensure that a card is only used for specific supplier, as an example. So let's go through the virtual card issuance. When you issue that card, you can select the validity period here. You can select the currency, so depending on which currency is going to be paying out in. And here's where we can start adding a lot more control. I think historically, when working with house banks, companies will just have cards which are issued to employees, and it's really difficult, to understand who's spending what, whether they're spending within policy, and often that can lead to uncomfortable and conversations with employees. So better to kind of ending up in that situation where someone spent out of policy, better to hard code it on a card level. So if someone's going on a trip and they have a daily limit of X amount, you can basically ensure that they have to remain within that threshold. And if they need to go above it, then they can do so, but only with express approval to increase the limit. So there's different frequencies that are available. So for example, if you have a monthly expectation of how much you're going to be paying a supplier, you could do a monthly limit. An alternative is like a total limit. So this could be like, for example, your marketing team, as an example, could be going to an event. You say, okay, we're going to issue a card up to £1,000, and this is your budget for the event. Alternatively, you could issue cards to every single employee in the company, which has a zero limit. So what that means is that effectively everyone has access to a card, and then only at the time where they need to do some travel or they need to make a purchase, you can increase the limit of that card to that amount. So this becomes almost like a prepaid card. Although on an infrastructure level, these are always credit cards. And you can also put in a transaction limit in there as well. And that's just if as another kind of risk mechanism, if you don't expect that any individual transaction should go over a certain amount, that's when that can come into play. We then have the card controls, and this can be useful again to ensure that cards are only used for the intended purpose. So for example, if I give a card to my marketing team, I might think that, okay, the only suitable expense category for that is advertising and marketing, and the card won't work elsewhere. Alternatively, I might give a card to my team, which they can use for travel and accommodation, and then it's locked to those group of MCC codes. Alternatively, if you have even more specific use cases, so for example, let's say we have a fleet card, which is to the team, to the drivers, and this card is only supposed to be used for electric vehicle charging. you can put in the MCC code for that. And that's just one example. There's, hundreds, if not thousands of different MCC codes for different things. So depending on whatever your specific, card related payment use cases, we can support that with these controls. Another example is you can use controls by match term. So for example, if you're paying a supplier like we pay HubSpot, you can include that match term, and then the card will only work with that supplier. Another method is through the merchant ID, which again is just a really specific way of ensuring that the card is only used with that merchant. There's different ways that you can use the dates feature. So I'll give you a couple of them just to illustrate. For example, let's say you have someone who only works, Tuesday to Friday. So there's actually no need for them to use the card on the other days. You can basically disable those aligned to the days that they're working. Alternatively, let's say someone who doesn't usually have a card, but it would be helpful for them to have a card so that they don't have to pay out of pocket for a trip, for example. You could issue them a card which is then only active for one specific day, and you can say, it's up to this limit. And this basically then gives much more rigid control to companies around, around employee spend without, employees having to pay out of pocket themselves. Again, you can put a time-based restriction on there to say that the card will only work within certain hours. So for example, if you're worried that a company card is going to end up being used for after work beers or whatever that might be, you can put a control to make sure that the card it does not work after a certain time. And you can also have location-based filters in there as well. Okay, so then moving over to the card attributes, you can label the card. So for example, let's just say Muks travel card as an example. And you can here select the team, which is the cost center, and the project, which is the cost unit. Again, all of this information maps across to Capture. And you can also include any custom fields, which are going to help to reconcile the information. So it could be, for example, an employee ID reference. It could be a supplier reference, but whatever is going to be helpful to basically reconcile from your side. And just like that, the card can be issued, and it would be available immediately if it's a virtual card to be added to Apple Pay or Google Pay, and can be spent straight away. So yeah, it's a very efficient but controlled issuance flow that is much more advanced than anything else that's available in the market. Okay, so that's the actual issuing flow. I'll just show you a couple more things around the actual card holder perspective, just so you can see what that looks like. So here, this is actually, my live environment. You can see I'm running a bit low there, but I have two different cards, and these cards are linked to different cost centers and cost units. So this is the kind of beauty of having virtual cards, is if you want to track spend a little bit more effectively, you can have multiple virtual cards for different purposes. And it's very easy for me to see what my available limit is and what my transaction limit is. If I ever need to do any kind of modifications to that, it's very simple for me to do so. I can put this information, leave a request, and any card attribute or variable can be amended after the card is issued. So there's complete flexibility to modify cards. And the other thing that's quite cool from an audit perspective is any modifications that are done to a card are, here very auditable. So you can see the timestamp dated record of, who made or who approved any changes to the card. So there's never any second guessing around, who's kind of done what. Okay, so that's the wallet side of things, and as a card holder, I can obviously request a card myself. There's other things, for example, I could just lock a card just by pressing this button just seamlessly, and of course I can terminate a card as well. I'll just give you a couple of examples of, for example, some of the things we talked about. So HubSpot is actually a supplier that we pay, and you can kind of see what that looks like for us. So here we have a 15,000 euros per month limit with HubSpot. Now, what that means is if we don't expect, if the supplier ends up overcharging, there may be a good reason for that, but initially it's almost like a check and balance, because if if the spend goes over that amount, then it would be declined, and we would then have the opportunity to check and make sure that that we're happy with this additional charge and it's something that we've actually agreed to. Here, just by clicking on the transactions for this card, I can easily just download a report, and I can do some spending analysis. Just this could be useful to understand how much you're paying suppliers, potentially if there's opportunities to unlock different some better rates because you're spending a lot with certain suppliers. But yeah, all of that information then is there at the tip of a fingertip, easily accessible. So hopefully that gives a decent overview of kind of the card issuing flow and some of the capabilities that we have. I guess now it probably seems like a good juncture to pass across to Jonny, and maybe he can now show you kind of what this looks like in Capture World.
Cool. Perfect. Thanks, Muks. Just so I've seen there's a couple of questions in the chat. What we'll do is we'll answer those. We'll answer those at the end when we've got some time. We'll open the floor to some other questions as well. So let me just share my screen now. Hopefully, Muks, if you could just let me know. Can you see that? Okay.
Yes.
See the app. Just so I'm not sharing another tab. Perfect. So this is capture expense on an iPhone, working on all the devices. So very digital, and basically can expense or upload a receipt in a lot of different apps as well. Not just our app, but we have connections to the likes of WhatsApp, Teams, and Slack. So you can upload your receipt basically wherever and whenever. Key thing is though, once you've tapped your card, like Muks was showing, and once you've been issued and you're spending, it's as simple as basically taking a picture of a receipt. So I've got a receipt right here. What you would be doing, I've got let's say a coffee receipt. I'm taking that picture, hitting use photo, and that's going to be stored in my receipt inbox exactly like this. What we're using behind the scenes is OCR and AI technology to scan in that data off that receipt. Works really quick, so I just refresh. What it's picking up from a finance point of view is the total amount on that receipt, any VAT or tax, that merchant name and date. And then that's practically it from a reconciliation point of view. Once you've tapped your card, like Muks was saying, it's a real-time integration. That flow will then flow into capture expense and into that user's account. And what we're trying to pick up is the merchant name, the total and date of that receipt against that transaction line. So if this was a real life view, a live transaction, that receipt would then flow in directly into that transaction line, and finance to be able to see that. Just to show you though what it would look like if you hadn't collected your receipts. If I go into the draft section right now, you're going to see a long list of all the credit card claims that I haven't reconciled. So you can see right here, the likes of Bamboo HR, maybe that subscription, General Motors, if I picked up some oil, like extra oil, everything's going to be flowing through like this, and you're going to be able to see this real time. So if, let's say, I pick up the receipt at a later date, if I take this zoom on, for example, I can click in, upload the receipt from the receipt inbox if I need to. So if I just do this top one for now, I can attach it. And then also what I can do is, where we have the connection with your accounting software or maybe payroll, is categorize that spend. So what did I use that spend for? So I could say for this one, let's say services and consultancy, and I can add in all the detail that I would need to. Where this becomes super powerful is obviously the connection and integration with your accounts, but then also where you can start adding your different policies and compliance rules. So if you have certain spend limits and thresholds, a bit like what Pliant were doing with the card limits, but maybe you need to add in some extra detail. So let's say client entertaining. What client were you with? What date was that? What date was that meeting? Any extra information you can then add into capture expense from a reporting point of view. But that's practically it in terms of that then being saved down. That would be the receipt attached and reconciled. There might be some more policies that I need to write in, so the reasons for it. But then it'd just be a case of highlighting everything there and submitting down for review. That would then go into the approval process for finance to do their checks. So checking the VAT, checking the totals and the receipts, and making sure everything matches. In terms of what that actually looks like, though, just from a high level point of view, if I find here. So this is capture expense on the browser. So nice, a bit more expanded, but much more reporting capability can be done here. In terms of approving those receipts and just double checking, you'll have the full approval workflow that's completely customizable and tailored to your organization. So you can set up as many steps as you need or stages of approval, whether that needs to go to the line manager first or straight to finance. That can all be tailored to your organization. But as you can see, this top one right here, I've got a credit card claim ready to review. I'm dropping down. Okay, I can see KFC, Apple Ireland, what might be a subscription, and then Holiday Inn. What I can do then is just highlight those claims. I can approve them if I'm happy with the credit card claims and the receipts attached, or I can reject and write the reason why I'm rejecting. So giving you all the compliance you need. And as you can see, I'm already broken a couple of policies here because they've all missing receipts and are all pending some sort of approval. So again, it just gives me that security and compliance that every receipt and every transaction line is getting checked real time and can be submitted ready for that statement reconciliation at the end of the month. And just from a high level point of view, in terms of total credit card spend, a bit like what you saw with Pliant, you can see the transactions real time. The exact same can be done in Capture Expense. So right here, you can see all the different card holders and how much they've got outstanding on each of their transactions that they're submitting and doing. So if I take my card, for example here, I can drop that down. That's probably because I've got so many. It's taking a while to think. I've got over 1,500 transaction lines. Let's pull down this one, for example. Got a bit less, and one's been rejected. So straight away, I can see right here all the different transaction lines, why they're incomplete, if they're outstanding. None of them have got receipts attached because there'd be a nice little receipt icon, and I can go in, I can highlight that person, and I can send out a reminder to go get those receipts in and reconciled with those transaction lines. So I can go chase up then the card holder, making sure things are reconciled real time. And then once all these claims are fully improved, they then can flow into your accounting ERP, just where we'll have the integrations. If it's with your traditional big accounting ERPs like your Sages, your Zeros, your Business Dynamics, or we can load into different payrolls, and we'll do that. We do that with you when we're onboarding you. But yeah, that's practically everything in terms of that workflow and how easy it is for a user to then, once they've tapped their card, to reconcile that receipt real time on the go, either in the app or in our WhatsApp and Teams integration or Slack. So cool, perfect. That is basically practically everything that me and Muks wanted to run through today. Is there any questions? Because we'll happily run through. Any questions that people have. I think there are some in the chat right now.
Yeah, maybe I can start. I think there's a few that are directed at me. Cherie Banks. Currently banked with Barclays. Would we have to change banks or open an account with you to use the platform? So you absolutely do not need to change banks. You can completely continue to use Barclays Bank. The only I guess if you're using us as a credit card, you would still have to do an onboarding with Pliant. So depending on how you used us, but let's say it was a monthly credit line, you would effectively have a direct debit which clears at the end of the month and basically repays your Pliant outstanding balance, and that would come from your Barclays bank account. So hopefully that helps. So there would be an onboarding with Pliant, but you can still continue to use your Barclays Bank for everything else. Shanice Ayres asked about creating a card per supplier. No, Shanice, that was just an example of how you could potentially do it. We have many different companies doing it, where you have multiple cards per supplier, but it's just from a procurement card perspective. This is one way that it can also make sense, particularly for recurring subscriptions, where you can basically just leave a virtual card as within the supplier's payment details, and then you have a card per supplier. But absolutely not necessary. And then Joe, I think asking about capture updated hourly. I need to check that, to be honest. My understanding was it should be real time. Maybe Joe, if you've heard something else, let's figure out what you've heard and check it. But it's it should be coming through real time. So yeah, Joe, I think I know who you are. So I'll pick up with you and pick up with capture as well.
Perfect. Is there any more questions? Yomi, yeah, Yomi, the recording will be sent out a little later on today, basically. Shree's got another question.
Yeah, we currently have over 250 company credit cards for staff with monthly spend limits. How do we incorporate this into the system? So, Sheree, basically, Pliant, it would be the credit card provider. So in this world where you're using an integrated Capture and Pliant product, we would then be replacing your credit card provider. That's not to say you can't use that if that's your bank as well as your credit card provider, you can still use them for banking and lending and whatever else. But if you wanted to use the integrated solution, then you would use Pliant, because we ourselves are a credit card provider, and we do this for ourselves, for our partners, and also on behalf of other banks. And as you see, those kind of card controls, those types of things are only available on Pliant issued cards, which is, I guess, the benefit you have of this partnership and the integration into Capture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Happy to have a call as well after, unless there's
couple more questions just coming in
there. Coming in. So we would have to set up a credit limit, and direct debit is one way to repay. Yes, exactly. So we would underwrite your company, and then you would pay a direct debit to us. Correct. And that credit limit, you could have a billing cycle which is weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. So there's different options that are available as far as that. Then the fees for international spending from Shanice. That question is basically, as I mentioned before, you can issue cards in multiple different currencies. So it kind of depends on where you're spending, and it also is like, slightly a commercial discussion to be had as well. But if you issue spending in any of the cards where you can issue currencies with Pliant, so for example, GBP, Euro, USD, most of the European currencies, then actually that will take away any of those costs for international spending. Whereas right now, if you have GBP bank card from, for example, Barclays, just as one example, they will usually charge you 2 to 3% for any international transactions. So our kind of multi-currency issuance is kind of taking away those fees, and should be take away any kind of costs related to payments. So hopefully that helps to clarify.
Absolutely. I'm just looking at the time. We did schedule this in for 45 minutes, but it looks like we've done it in about 30. Just so you know, what we'll be doing is be issuing out I think it's a form. So if you want to set up a meeting with myself or Muks, you can do, and we can have a more, tailored one-on-one discussion about what your actual needs are, both from an expense point of view and a credit card point of view, and where we can help you. So yeah, is there any more questions that anyone has that we can answer for you guys today? If not, please feel free to book in a meeting, and we can speak to you more one-on-one. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Sheree. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Victoria. Thank you, Tom.
I think Shanice has asked another question. Sorry. So for exchange rate losses, this would be eliminated as this is in real time. So basically, we've got a few different scenarios here, right? So let's just say you have a GBP issued card, and you are spending in a currency which Pliant don't support. So for example, I don't know, like let's just say Zimbabwean dollars, right? As an example, for that, what happens is Visa themselves, and we're a Visa card issuer, will apply their own exchange rate, which happens in real time. And then, depending on the commercial structure that we have with you as a customer, there may be an additional FX markup on top of that, which would be similar to the structure of how it works with a bank, but just a lot more competitive in terms of what that FX rate is. Now, if you issue a USD card and spend in USD, then of course there's no FX rate. That is just there's no conversion element that's required. So hopefully that helps. And I'm more than happy to kind of talk about it in some more detail as well.
Any more questions from anyone? Cool. I think if there's no more questions, I think what we can do is we can wrap up here. It's been great speaking with you. Oh, we'll also be sending instructions how to book a meeting. Oh, Shanice, if you on the screen, I think for me it's on the bottom left. It says book a meeting. If you click onto there, I believe you can then send through your details. Me or Muks will reach out to you and we'll set up a session. And we can set up a session to run through the platform in more detail. But yeah, that'll be there. That link will be there. Oh yeah, and there you go. Marketing have said that it will be more details, sending out more details. But yeah, if that's all the question for you for today, guys, it's been a pleasure running through both platforms and basically introducing the new partnership that we have with Pliant. It's been great speaking with you, Muks, as well, and running through basically the presentation. But yeah, if there's no more questions, we'll leave it there, guys. And thanks for joining us.